We are All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Reverend Ron Phares, and this is our sacred hour, our holy place where beloved community cultivates meaning and makes of this experience a kind of magic. The eco-theologian and mythologist Sophie Strand writes that magic is an escape from this world into this world. Magic doesn't take us out of our ecosystems, she says. It roots us more deeply in them. This soulful ecosystem welcomes your magic. This soulful ecosystem seeks to honor the memory of those who came before, who created it, those who brought us here, and those who were here already. The Ute, Comanche, Arapaho, Apache, Cheyenne, Kiowa, Pawnee, and Lakota, and before them, the aspen, oak, and pine, the waters and the soil, each and all suffused with magic, saturated with meaning, and expressing it. All welcome and invited into this, our beloved community, All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. Please rise and body your spirit. Let us celebrate our coming together in song.
So my prompt for this reflection was about if I had ever been a true believer in whatever. The first time that I knew I was a true believer was the day that I lost the true belief. I was sitting on a rocky outcropping in the south part of Garden of the Gods. I was a teenager, and I noticed that there were several beer cans lying around on the ground. And it was at that point that I understood that nature was not going to just take care of whatever we did to her, them, it. And so I lost my true belief that nature was indestructible. From there, I walked toward the kissing camels, picking up all of the cans that I could carry, and I had an armful like this, thinking that the visitor center, which was there at Kissing Camels in those days, would have a trash can. It did not. And so I was 3 miles from home by then, and I walked all of them with my clutch of cans, and my muscles cramped up and got sore, and my breathing got heavy, and I refused to put the cans down, and I walked all those 3 miles home, and that was the birth of my true belief that I have a responsibility to care for my natural environment. Those days were followed by my regrettable 20s. And my father killed himself when I was 16, and I spent my 20s trying to figure out how I should relate to men, and I made some mistakes that I regret to this day, and I came to lose sight of my inherent dignity and worth. So when I had a dream, a very vivid dream about being accepted into this community as a person of worth and worthy to participate in worship, it was a very powerful, moving dream for me. It was so moving that I went out into the backyard and sat on the lawn and silently wept for about a half hour. I know that many of us do not believe in redemption because we don't believe in original sin. But I will always be a true believer of the redeeming power of forgiveness. And I have come to also be a true believer in love as a guide, the compass north, and the value of all that is life-giving and life-affirming and life-enhancing and life-sustaining. I think that is what gives things value. And lastly, the last true belief that I want to talk about, I acquired while I was going to church in Littleton, living in Englewood, in the Denver metro area. There was a person in that congregation who taught appreciative inquiry, which is a process that is deeply democratic. And I have come to have a true belief that democratic process where everyone who has a stake in a decision gets a say in how it's made, that is the best way to make decisions for a community. There you have it.
So October marks our own attempt to translate our ancestors into awareness and possibly unlock some understanding. This move culminates with an invitation to our ancestors to be with us during our All Souls ceremony on the 29th. Now, our ancestors can be a bit of a strange dialect for us. In some ways, they occupy the same country as all the other others. Angels, demons, personified plants, and various legends we carry in our bones. It's a potent land, and they should be deciphered with care. So the first move toward that translation for us was the bone story we heard this morning, Tamlin. Now, when the Bone Story Collective, which I think is what I'm calling that cohort, it sounds like a rock band, so, I've never gotten to be a part of a rock band. So the Bone Story Collective, when we first started considering what tale to tell this month, Tamlin emerged as the one with the most energy behind it. But we also puzzled over its purpose. How is Tamlin connected with our invitation to our ancestors? For me, part of what emerged from that conversation with the group was that the March of the Fae on All Hallows Eve was a march within the liminal, the transition space, the wilderness, the dark forest soul of the story, the dark forest soul of our lives. As liminal space, it is neither here nor there, but also both. It is dusk and dawn, a place wherein mortal could interact with Fae. And as All Hallows is a transition time, it too is liminal. And the story is indeed and traditionally associated with this season in its country of origin. But also, and perhaps more meaningfully for me, within that liminality, Tamlin drew a ley line between our sensitivity and our sense of the Fae, and our sensitivity to and sense of our ancestors, and our sensitivity to and sense of our own embeddedness in the world. In other words, developing our sensibility to the Fae is the same exercise as developing our sensitivity to our ancestors, is the same exercise as developing our sensitivity to home. When we develop these sensibilities with intention and attention, we replace the irrelevance and powerlessness of existential loneliness with the sense of personal relationship and meaningfulness. And this is how we build a home. Does that sound too woo-woo? If so, buckle up. Here's how I got here. The way I see it, we are all and each expressions of being. That goes for everything, from molecule to cloud to tree to musical note. Everything is a unique and interdependent expression of being's inherent and necessary dynamism. So if you want to put that into religious vocabulary, you, we, me, and everything are expressions of Goddess or Gaia. Everything is an interrelated emergence, articulation, expression of the fundamental creativity of the Tao. So I use the term expression pointedly. It connotes a communication. You, me, and everything are the speech of being. We are a story, if you will. And what this means is that everything can be read as a message, an expression. Of course, if you don't know how to read, if you don't know vocabulary, it's easy to look at hieroglyphics and only see abstractions on papyrus. So we need to have a means of understanding raw events as meaningful events. Meaning is already there. We just need a Rosetta Stone to decipher it and unlock it for ourselves. In fact, even without attending to it, we swim through so much meaning on a moment-to-moment basis, we unconsciously and necessarily limit and filter out a huge amount of sensory information that is available to us. And this is good. It's no good to be gobsmacked while you're driving. Maybe next time you're about to get angry at somebody for cutting you off, you might just think, they're having a spiritual experience right now. Maybe I should not interrupt this moment. On the other hand, while we may filter out most of the information coming our way, it is also true that there is way more information happening, way more expressions of being, more story than we are even capable of sensing with our human material senses. Our senses are not cued to the odor of butyric acid, like the deaf and blind tick, nor to electrical fields like the black ghost knifefish, nor to air compression waves like the echolocating bat. We are not aware of these things at all, not in any significant way. So we limit the fraction of reality that we can perceive. But we have a tool that both opens our perception beyond the material senses while filtering that data in such a way that it becomes meaningful. We have a Rosetta Stone that, when intentionally deployed, brings us into deeper awareness with our dialogue with the cosmos. And yea, when we then experience the world as more vibrant, more vivacious, and more interested in us, it is made personal and alive. And therein is something like love, with all its comfort, danger, and ecstasy. So the tool we use to do this, the Rosetta Stone that we employ, wittingly or not, is story. Stories are the languages that frame and render reality comprehensible. Stories are how we translate the ongoing messaging from life itself. As far as I can tell, and this is complete armchair, what is this? What am I trying to do? Description. Well, I'm trying to draw something. I don't know. But I think I do it in 3 steps. Stories do this in 3 steps. They condition our imagination to perceive events or expressions of being in particular ways. They condition our imagination. Stories condition our imagination. What we do or do not perceive is not entirely, but is significantly dependent on the scope and shape of our imagination. Second, conditioned by story, we then perceive these expressions of being, these messages, some of which we'd otherwise be unaware of. It is often the case that we first encounter these expressions as something extraordinary, or capital O other. Fairies, angels, ancestors, luminous rocks, burning bushes, coincidences, aliens, God, meaningful arrangements of light and shape, moments of saturated significance without subject, moments of other that are nonetheless voluptuously intimate. Once perceived, we are able to integrate these expressions into our being. And sometimes that feels like wrestling something with teeth and wings. Sometimes it's arduous. Sometimes it's grace-filled. And often we emerge with something like a new name. So stories then begin to act as a kind of shared language with the world and open lines of communication, dialogues that were previously untapped. And this is a kind of magic. Stories are a kind of spell. And by this magic, we can sense that we are a known and knowing part of the great conversation. Doing this sort of is like dream interpretation, but instead of interpreting dreams, you're interpreting your life and your encounters. You're interpreting your own perception. We had a raccoon come into our yard last night, and he was not well. I think he or she had been hit by a car, or they were sick. They were preparing to die. And they came into our yard, and we made sure all of our animals and children were not around this creature. And it did, in fact, overnight, it dug itself a little hole, and it died. We interpret the events in our lives as though we were interpreting a dream. So without doubt, some stories are better than others. More articulate, more creative, more procreative, more relevant to the time than others. We currently live in what philosopher Charles Eisenstein calls the story of separation. Some of the myths operative in this story are the myth of progress and individualism. And at this point, given that it is killing millions of beings, entire species, our species, and damaging the planet itself, I think we can safely say that that story has been poorly discerned and is not an accurate translation of the world. We must return or discover a story that is in deeper alignment with the ongoing expressions of being. So to recap just a bit, everything is an expression of the Tao, goddess, or spirit, or the universe, or whatever. Everything is an expression. There's a lot more being expressed than our senses are accustomed to perceiving. Those expressions that are, these expressions are rendered meaningful and sometimes even perceptible by our imagination via the tool of stories. Stories enable us to encounter and then integrate the other. Indeed, many stories that tell of the others tell us how to engage with them. And in fact, stories might even be the other. They teach us that otherness is an ever-present opening, but also story is a means by which to perceive the other, to become aware of their messages, and establish a dialogue with them. From Jacob and the Angel, to Juan Diego on Our Lady of Guadalupe, to Hildegard of Bingen, to fairy sightings at Findhorn, to angels, demons, extraterrestrials, past lives, little green men in the Matrix, signs, oracles, rocks, trees. Humans have been interacting spiritually with others forever. In our literal and materialist era, we have tended to brush off such occurrences, chalking them up to whimsy, narcotics, or mental illness. And maybe sometimes they are, which, by the way, should not necessarily mean we dismiss them. However, we do need to be careful, and we are protected from lunacy in this endeavor by each other. Direct experience is one of our sources as Unitarian Universalists, but I would submit that none of our sources are on their own meaningful or trustworthy. Indeed, it is easy to misunderstand, to mistranslate, and that can result in anything from embarrassment to murder and ecocide. So we must be careful. So I recommend verifying any understanding you have. You're out having a very nice conversation with a rock? Awesome. Let's talk about the messages you received and see if they jive with both at least two of our sources as well as our community is construed by covenant. So we don't just have an experience and take it for truth and come home and act on it. We have an experience interpreted through story. We receive a message, we interpret life as we interpret dream, but then we run it through some checks. These are good guardrails so that we don't lose our way. So my hope is that I've at least prepared your mental soil to receive a few seeds, right? We're surrounded by meaning. We render that meaning through story, wittingly or unwittingly, and wittingly is far better. Story is the Rosetta Stone of perception and gives body to the meaning inherent to experience. Story makes space for us to perceive what might otherwise be outside of our frame of reference and what therefore is often thought of as some kind of other, the wisdom of which we are then able to integrate into our being. We are then more deeply aware of how lusciously embraced we are. So I bring all this up because I want us to be prepared this month to attend to the specific stories of our ancestors and also to the broader story of ancestral potency and relevance. The others in this case, in the case of ancestors, are those of us. The others in the case of ancestors are those of us, made strange by time and death and immateriality. But their strangeness is also an invitation, for it puts us in the position to welcome them back, to welcome the other in, to reclaim their wisdom and pain and love as our own, to honor and heal, and to find ourselves honored and healed. So this is nothing more than experience, and nothing less than magic. It is how we find our way back into alignment, vitality, and a more beautiful way of being. Yeah. Remain standing for the benediction. Y'all clap for yourselves. It's good stuff. All right. Hey, as we leave this sacred place and time that we have created together, this time that is run a bit long, I know what you're thinking. It's time for coffee. Let us leave with gratitude for the stories that we are about to cultivate with each other. Let us turn our attention to our ancestors, to the sun, to the trees, to all the others that inhabit our lives, and find in there meaning and love and life. Let us go in peace, and let us go singing.
Before you go, we have it on good authority.
We have an announcement that completely slipped my mind, but there's someone in this congregation, a very, very important person, who's having a birthday tomorrow. And guess who it is? It's Rev Ron. So we're going to sing happy birthday to Rev Ron.